Welcome to the Dynasty Dummies podcast. I am Zach Reed. I am joined by JMic, and we are done the Hootenanny. It's in the rearview mirror. All of the 2023 rookies have been talked about, dreamed on, and put to bed. We're now waiting for the NFL draft. We are exactly 1 week away from round 1 of the NFL draft. And we'll be joining you, or you'll be joining us. We'll all just join together on day 2 on that Friday, next Friday, for the Dynasty Dummies Day 2 draft show live, where we let everybody else do day 1, where nothing really happens except for the quarterbacks. And we'll be sitting around talking about all of these wide receivers, all of these running backs who hit in the second round and third round. They don't know it. The Dynasty Dummies is a clever nickname. We're sharper than they think.
They know that we know that they know that we know absolutely nothing.
I know.
but at all. But we're grateful to be able to do it. Hootenanny in the books. And I think that now, Zach, the question becomes, after we've had all that fun and we're about to open the actual present, the bow looks really pretty. We're really close. So now what? Do we just wait? What are we supposed to do now, Zach?
Well, so that's the thing, because everybody right now is waiting. Everybody right now, for fear of looking foolish, for fear of looking bad, everybody is sitting tight and waiting for that last piece of information with the NFL draft. And I think that there is an advantage to be gained right now. Game theory calls it the first mover advantage, where if you move first, it's better than moving simultaneously with everybody else. You can get out ahead of things. You can set the price. It's the old, if you're in a league and a trade goes down and then everybody looks at each other and, man, I would have paid more than that. If you're the first mover, you get that price. Where I work in the shipyard, we talk about it. The advantage of being early, a little bit different, because it's the cost of things, and it costs like 70% more to fix something on a finished ship when it's in the water than it does to fix it in design and fix it early. And so getting things done early is such a huge advantage. Bitcoin, off the top of my head. So Bitcoin in 2009, it was invented. It was created in January of 2009. The initial Bitcoins were worth nothing. I mean, they were fractions of a cent. There were a lot of zeros before you had any positive numbers. And I just took a look at it tonight. It's sitting steady, a little over $28,000 a coin. If you were in early, you'd be feeling pretty good about things at this point. I think we can learn something from that. I think we can learn something from being the people who are moving right now. And it's not just in the draft, like your rookie drafts, but that's primarily, I mean, you and I talked about this. You and I both had this same thought. We kind of looked at each other, and it was kismet. We were like, it's two guys, one brain, and we had the same idea of there are areas in this draft where if you move now, there's an advantage. But I think it's also bigger than that.
Holy 108, Batman. What are we going to do now? I love this discussion. I think that we're going to be able to jump into, Zach. And so just to further set the table here, to clarify, at this point, y'all, the work has been done. The film has been watched. The numbers have been crunched. The podcast, the content, they have been created aplenty all over, whether it be YouTube, Twitter, name the website, name the podcast, whatever it is. All of that hay is in the barn, and now the actual draft is what so many are now waiting for. However, there is a really unique inflection point in our drafts this season. We know, or at least what we have a really good idea of at this time, Bijan Robinson is 99% of people's 101 in many instances, regardless of format. Superflex, 1 QB, 2 QB, start 12, 14 team, 16 team. Like a lot of folks don't believe that it really makes a difference. So if we know that Bijan's going one, we know that those what has kind of sifted out at this point as the top three quarterbacks in many's eyes, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson. We know those four are likely the ones going in the top four. We then have a pretty decent consensus of the likes of Jackson Smith and Jigba at around the 105. And then we get to 106, 107, 108. And now we get to really interesting places because we think that Jahmyr Gibbs is probably 106. And then 107 is, what's the wide receiver that you like? Or are you in on Will Levis? And all of a sudden, this becomes a place where if you have conviction, it's a really unique place to make a move. So let's explore that some, Zach.
Yeah, and I think that you've heard on so many podcasts and from so many people who are really good at breaking this game down and delivering information to the masses that those top 6 picks are where you want to be. And so you get into this. We do herd behavior. People do. We follow the pack. We follow the group. On Twitter, we like to call it the echo chamber. But you get to a point where nobody wants to be wrong. They don't want to make that pick outside of what consensus is because you get ridiculed. You've done something outside of the norm. And so all of a sudden you've broken away from the group. And I think beyond that 106 being the consensus of picks that you want, there's also a real negativity toward this class. And it's coming from NFL sources. I use sources with air grammar. It's coming from NFL analysts who, yeah, they're way more plugged in than we are. I mean, I can talk to Tom at the water cooler, but I don't have any ins with any NFL teams for sure. And so I think that you, Dynasty manager, Dynasty Dummy listener, can use this to your advantage because the 107, the 108, the 109, the 110 are being undervalued right now. You have to move now. It's not a wait till the draft and then see, because once that happens, it's too late. As soon as the draft happens, everybody's going to be talking about what picks are of value. Right now, the top 6 picks are the picks you want, and everything else is, we don't know yet because this is a bad class. The receivers are short. There aren't many bell cows. Will Levis is inaccurate. He's not. He completed 64% of his passes. He's not. He will check down. But there is, again, Levis. There's Gibbs. There's Quentin Johnston. There's Jordan Addison. Like, that group of players is valuable. And if you are willing to either make your own evaluation as to which of those players you like and then go get them, or fall back on our evaluation. It's part of why we do it. I mean, yes, go double check, trust but verify. JMic and I have Jordan Addison in the top tier of wide receiver prospects in this class. And there's not a lot to choose from between JSN and Jordan Addison. I think they're both fantastic. They win a little bit different ways. But man, this is a place that you can exploit the groupthink. You can exploit the inactivity, the unwillingness to be different, the fear of being wrong that is going to continue for another week. You have to get on it. You have to do it now. But this is exploitable.
And I think, Zach, what many people will feel at this point as you navigate that is, hey, Zach, that's cool and all. That's nice. Thanks for telling me that this is an area that I can exploit. But if you're not giving me the answers to the test, I'm not comfortable trying to navigate that. So I guess to some degree, I want you to be able to walk, and let's try to talk through a little bit of between now and the actual draft. How can we assess what makes sense, or how someone can assess what makes sense for them? Because I think for us, what we're understanding and the way that we see this is player values, specifically of guys in that area, are going to go up and or down, obviously, over that time. It's not really fixed as in those top six. We know who those top six are. It would be really different for anyone to hop into those top six with what we know about profiles, what we know about the hype machine, what we know about what these guys have put on paper with their performance in season and now in the non-point scoring season. So as you look to navigate this space, Zach, what are primary factors that allow you to say, yes, I want to leverage X, Y, and Z pieces to start getting into this space? Because people, like you said, people don't want to be wrong. If I've only got one pick in this area, I don't want to mess this up, Zach.
So I think it is, again, the fear is getting it wrong.
Yep.
When we do our evaluations, the reason why we do the evaluations pre-draft is exactly for this moment, because everybody's afraid of getting it wrong. We've already done our analysis of the player's talent. And so, yes, the draft capital matters because that is an NFL team giving a player the stamp of approval and the reign and playing time to be good and be great and be productive. But I don't believe that the difference between going at pick 31 and the difference to going pick 45 is that much of a big deal, at least to me. So, like, if Jordan Addison manages to fall out of the first round, let's just say hypothetically, because I think that's a fear, the evaluation I have on Jordan Addison does not change. Jordan Addison is still an incredible player. It's the same thing that happened with Metcalf. It's the same thing that happened with AJ Brown. It's, if you evaluate these players and you have conviction in the way you evaluate, a player falling into the second doesn't affect it, or at least not very much. Now, a player falling into the fifth, like Kayshon Boutte, if he falls in the draft to the fourth, fifth, sixth round, now all of a sudden you're not touching him anywhere near there. If a team takes a shot on him in the second, all of a sudden this 107 and 110 looks a heck of a lot better because Kayshon Boutte is talented enough to be in that tier of players. So again, and I think you're asking more specific. So if I'm looking at the 106, I have Gibbs, but I think the wild card is what happens with the Will Levis. Will Levis is the keystone which this whole dynasty rookie draft hinges upon. Because if Levis goes 4 to the Colts, all of a sudden you could see him up in the top 5 of rookie drafts. Like, it could be 4 quarter. It could be Bijan and 4 quarterbacks. It could be Bijan 3 quarterbacks, JSN, and then Levis. So all of a sudden, that range of 107, 108, 109, 110, even the 106, like all of that gets even more interesting the more players that get moved up into that area. And I think that is the piece that a lot of people are missing is, you've got Young, you've got Stroud, and I know that Stroud has been kind of beaten about the head and face through the media this past week. He's still a really talented quarterback, and a lot of that leaking out sounds to me like teams that want to have him fall so they can take him. Teams do that. It's a business, and all is fair or quasi. I mean, this is a league with a legal tampering period.
It's gross.
Yeah, yeah. and so again, Young, Stroud, Richardson with what he did at the combine and the flashes that he put on tape and the inexperience that he has, like all combined, plus playing in the SEC, and then all of a sudden Levis draft capital. This top group expands, which pushes that second tier of players down a little further, which makes these picks more valuable, but nobody's talking about it right now because everybody's afraid. Everybody's waiting for the concrete evidence, what is going to happen. And in order to get in order to have that first mover advantage, you got to move before everybody sees it. It's the same thing when we talk about micro markets. The way to exploit micro markets is to understand what has potential or what players have potential to put up numbers and gain value, like rocket value in the mind of the dynasty community, and get in early before that value goes up. This is the same thing. This is a micro market on late first round pick or mid to late first round picks.
And one of the unique pieces of what you're talking through, Zach, is, and we've talked about this before, is that you have the freedom to get creative with how you go about looking to secure these picks. This is going to be a really key time for you to have a very keen understanding, not only of your roster, not only of the direction that you see your team going in, but having a very clear picture of how the teams who currently have these picks, 107, 108, 109, these areas, what they actually value and how they navigate their drafts, their teams, all of that. Because now this is going to allow you to be able to take players that maybe there's a lot of sizzle on in the dynasty space right now. So players who are already currently on your teams. This could look something, I don't know, something along the lines of a Jerry Jeudy, something along the lines of I could just rattle off a bunch of players, Ramondre Stevenson, whomever it may be that people are really excited about for this season. You get to decide now and early if players that you have on fringes or areas that may have a late first valuation, can you pair that, or can you take that player and then go and get a pick in this area? Or, hey, maybe it's a case where you're saying, hey, I actually really feel good about these players. I feel really good about my team's prospects for next year. Do I look at perhaps moving my 24 first to be able to get the 107, 108 back, plus maybe a little bit of juice on top to be able to mitigate some of that risk of moving out of that? This is going to allow folks to really have fun in leagues where other folks that you're playing with also aren't scared to be able to make moves now at this time.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a really important piece of evaluating the teams in your league and the managers in your league and the way they play, because some of these teams are going to be contenders.
Yes.
Like they've earned the 107, 108, 109, 110. They were in the playoffs. They have a chance to run it back. And so maybe somebody like Chris Godwin is interesting to them. Maybe somebody like a J.K. Dobbins is interesting to them. And so it's it's not just it's not just about going and getting these picks. It's about looking at your team, figuring out what you can give up from the point where you are. So I mean, it's like exactly what you said. If you are a contender, now you're looking at potentially trading future picks that are going to be lower because your team is solid. But you can also add a piece that continues to grow your team. Jordan Addison continues to grow your team. Zay Flowers may continue to grow your team. Quentin Johnston, if he becomes what a lot of people think he can, continues to grow your team. Man, imagine being in a Superflex league and getting Will Levis, who's now a starting quarterback in the league for the next 5, 6, 7 years, at 108. I mean, how beautiful is that? And so I think that you've got to understand, yes, there is risk, but there's more risk in waiting, because if you wait, you're going to either miss out or you're going to pay a price far greater than what you had to if you moved early.
So then the question becomes, Zach, one that I will pose to you now. If I don't have conviction in whether it be my process or with actual players, or with these prospects, if I don't have a heavy conviction, I now risk falling into the group of folks who are all waiting to see what takes place. And if I fall into that, I recognize that while it is the safe space, it's also the space that everyone else is leaning into. And just recently, I was actually listening today to the latest episode of the Trade Addicts podcast. Our dear friend Russ Fisher, Rocky Petrella, and they had good old Tommy B on from our Trade Addicts 6 League. And Tommy was talking through various things in terms of how he values and how he sees players, how he sees league settings, and where he goes about chasing his edge. And one of the things that he said resonated so heavy with me, not because he's my league mate, but because of the fact that when he said this, it encapsulates everything about how I see this game and how I see so much of the success that takes place in this game. 6 words, really easy to go with. The quote was, chase the value of being different.
Yeah.
Chase the value of being different. And I thought, that is absurdly profound. And it takes into account, when you do that, when you chase that value of being different, you're creating an edge for yourself in whatever direction, whether it be the unintended consequence of, if the goal is to be really good, the unintended consequence of working in the direction that's going to help you get a better pick in the future, or if that's putting you in a position to differentiate yourself from the other middle teams in your league that now catapult you toward the top. And it's not just taking the risk for the sake of taking a risk and going on an adventure, but it's understanding that these edges, with all the information that we have, the edges get slimmer and slimmer every year, especially in sharper leagues or leagues where you're in with folks who are glued in, tapped into the various news cycles. Chasing the value of being different allows you to tap into a space that differentiates you from your league mates and inherently gives you an edge that others in your league don't have. And I think that this is me borrowing the brilliance of Tommy here, and I think it's awesome to be able to explore that.
Yeah, that is absolutely brilliant and absolutely what we're talking about. It's the fortune favors the bold. It's go out and make that move. And again, don't make it to make it, but make it with convictions, make it with your evaluation and your analysis, and make it calculated, but make it fast.
Make
Like
it.
go make that move. And it's goes back to the John Bosch strategy.
Yes.
Like, you want to be first or at the bottom in a dynasty league, because those are the two places where you have mobility. You have if you're first, your mobility is your league dues are paid and you have some extra. You're feeling good about that. If you're at the bottom, your mobility is you have the most valuable pick in each round of your rookie draft. And so, it's the Russ always add value. That's an easy way to add value. And they're replenishable. You get those picks every year. So if you miss on them, it's not as big a deal because you got next year, and you can always make moves to correct. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about this game. If you understand that we're all going to be making mistakes, if you, instead of grabbing onto your mistakes and holding tight and continue to be inflexible, you look at your mistakes, you analyze them, you understand what they were, how they got made, why they were mistakes, and you can grow from that and pivot off it. And oftentimes you can make a mistake and then dig yourself out of it because other people in your league haven't let go of that same mistake yet. When there were 3 years where you could trade Corey Davis. I mean, that's and again, it's not that everybody is an idiot. It's not that but we're stubborn, and also we're afraid to be wrong. And so if everybody is saying one thing, it's really hard psychologically. It's really hard to go swim against that stream.
And I want to make sure that I credit him properly. Tommy is actually on Twitter at FF Tommy B, like Bravo. So Tommy, shout out to you. Zach, as you say that, and one thing that it brings me back to is a lot of the psychology behind how we receive feedback. And I know it sounds really obscure when I say this, but I'll try to walk through it without rambling. There is typically tends to be two different mindsets when it comes to this idea of receiving feedback. There is the fixed mindset, and then there is the growth mindset. And the fixed mindset is the one that so many people hang on to so heavily. The fixed mindset says, I made this mistake. I'm such an idiot. I can't believe this. I'm a failure. And that's the one, especially when we have the trade where we unintentionally traded the 2023 101 in a trade that happened 2 years ago. And now you're really sour that, I could have had Bijan. What was I thinking? That was crazy. That's dumb. Oh, I can't believe I did that. I hate this. I hate this game. And we throw a pity party sometimes, not understanding that if we lean into the growth mindset tells us, I made a mistake. It's okay to make a mistake because every mistake is an opportunity to learn. And that, again, inherently brings value that the fixed mindset and being scared or having the fear of failure do not allow you to tap into when we're talking about this very area of moving into this area of scary inflection point of a draft.
Yeah, and that's a dangerous trap, especially for analysts because you're expected to be right. You're expected to give good advice. You're expected to give the right advice. You're expected to get people to a point where they're winning leagues where, yes, absolutely all of that is true. But the way you win your leagues is exactly what you said. Understanding that you're going to be wrong, but understand that it's how you get to a decision that is often more important than the actual decision that's made. Taking Saquon Barkley or Christian McCaffrey in the years where they got injured was not a bad pick.
Right.
Now, the end result didn't go the way you wanted to, but you had one of maybe 4 running backs who could potentially out distance the field and be the overall running back one by, a margin of 80, 100 points. The McCaffrey, Kamara, Barkley, like those years, even though the decision to take them didn't work, it doesn't mean that it was the wrong decision. And so sometimes you have to evaluate that. You have to evaluate the circumstances of the results and figure out if it was bad process, which you can revise, or if it was just bad luck and variance, which there's a lot of in this game.
I feel like that's even a more unique place to go at some point, perhaps another time, when we think about specifically in drafts or even in fantasy. If you have good process, is there such thing as a bad decision? If you have bad process, is there such thing as a good decision?
Well, so I don't know if you follow poker at all. Like when I was in college, I that was like the height of like all of the online like poker stars, and you had Moneymaker and Raymer, and so Chris Moneymaker came in and took the World Poker Tour by storm with something like a play strategy that they call game theory optimized poker, which essentially gave him a way to bet that was counter to the conventional theory, and gave him an unexploitable strategy. So he's betting in places 70% of the time where nobody else would bet.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter, it was playing suited aces and playing, king 10, like where conventional wisdom says fold and you only play the real bull of the woods hands. He's playing a strategy that is so different, and he was in on it so early that you gain that advantage. And again, I think that by having a process and having an understanding and getting in on things early, and again, we're going to harp on this because that's what this entire show is about. There is such an advantage to coming to an idea early. And again, like we stand on the shoulders of some really, really smart people, like JJ Zacharyson with late round quarterback, Peter Howard with the vacated targets don't exist, and understanding how to value wide receivers, and that 2 wide receivers can coexist in the same offense because they're not actually stealing targets from each other. They're actually adding value to each other's targets, because now you're moving the ball more efficiently and you're scoring touchdowns, and you're also taking coverage from another player, where instead of being able to roll a safety, now you've got Jalen Waddle here underneath, and you got to pay attention to him, even though Tyreek Hill is on that other side. Like all of these people who come up with, and Sean Siegel with 0 RB. Like if you got out ahead of 0 RB, if you were one of the early adopters, now you can't do a startup, or it's hard to do a startup with a 0 RB strategy, especially if you're in a plugged in league, because everybody wants those young wide receivers early. Everybody wants that advantage at quarterback. Everybody wants the advantage at those other positions because they know that you can running back in the aggregate, that you can be, it's anti-fragility. It's the players who come in when there's an injury are still scoring points for you. And if you have them at cost on your bench, you didn't pay very much for that production, which equates to wins because you're getting uber production out of those 6 players that you drafted that aren't running backs, and then you're still getting running back production. Like if you understand that, if you stand on the shoulders of really smart people who are not us, JMic, like we'll talk about their strategies and their brilliance and use it to our advantage, but we are not those people. We are the people who can see that and see where your league misses that. And I think that's what we try to do. And that's where the edge is for us, is at the margins, is at the psychology of your league, is at identifying those nexuses of your league is doing one thing, but man, there's a chance to do something optimal over here if you just have the guts to go do it.
The guts to go do it. That willingness to say, I'm open to trying something new. I'm open to doing something that I haven't done before, even if it leaves me looking foolish in the end. And again, this isn't running into battle against a loaded army and just trying to hack your way out of it. This is making calculated moves that say, this is an area that I want to get after. And if I'm able to successfully get where I want to be, I now open up my options. And flexibility in this game is so key. Having options, having pieces that allow you to do more things, to build moves on top of moves, are going to put people in positions to do really fun things in their leagues if you're courageous enough to give it a try.
And the cool thing is, pay attention to what consensus thinks.
Yes.
Pay attention to what the masses thinks. Listen to the big analysts that people in your league are listening to, because then you understand. Last year, PFF had Gabe Davis at wide receiver 14 before the year. Wide receiver 14. You're seeing some really smart people shout Gabe Davis from the roof. I went on a show with Jacob Rickroad and Peter Howard, and we talked about Gabe Davis, and Jacob Rickroad is playing a lot of best ball. And so he's seeing Gabe Davis go really highly. And so we talked about Gabe Davis, how he's probably not a buy. I started looking at the Dynasty ADP. Gabe Davis was going at wide receiver 38 in Dynasty. So now you're looking at redraft. Redraft loves him. Dynasty hasn't come to that yet. They're going to. So my argument, and I went toe-to-toe with Peter, which is fun. Like he loves that. He loves a good fight. And said, I think right now, Gabe Davis is a buy in Dynasty because there's going to come a point in the season where he's a sell. And if you have him now, you have that price increase and you win. It's a similar thing to what we're talking about with these picks, except for the price increase is going to come and you already have that pick. And you can make the pick of the player who is now increased in value just by waiting a week. You have that little bit of a gestation period, and boom, all of a sudden, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers. If Zay Flowers goes into the first round, even if you're not a Zay Flowers believer, if you traded into that 108 and now Zay Flowers is a first round pick and you have somebody in your league who you know is staunch draft capital believer, I guarantee you in a week you will get more for that pick than what you paid for it, and that's a win. You're just trying to add value, and you can add it a little bit at a time. When this is Russ making trades, cascading trades, you don't have to build all your value at once. You make a gain, and then you make another gain, and then you make another gain. And to quote Gus Sinski, the catcher in For Love of the Game, a lot of little bottles make a big bottle, Chappie. You can get to a big value gain and a tremendous team build by making a lot of little moves that add up.
Zach, I think at this point, as we round third, heading home, not only in the draft process, but in our show this evening, there are so many pieces that I hope that people are able to take away from our time together today. I don't want to necessarily say more than anything, because I remember being in school and having teachers have these big, long lectures. And then at the end, if you don't hear anything else I said, do this. And it's like, wait, what did we just spend the last 45 minutes doing if you're only going to tell me that the last minute is what matters? I really hope people are inspired to be courageous, not reckless, but to be courageous, to be strategic, to innovate in their leagues, and to take a moment after they hear this to go in and do a little bit of looking at what has their process been during this time, and what are some of the things that your league values or your league mates have been navigating over the last year, the last few months. Is it stagnant? Whatever the case may be. And truly take advantage of the opportunity that lies before you to navigate a really unique area of this draft for the benefit of your long-term strategy of winning or being successful in your various leagues.
Yeah, go get it. Go get it. It's you have to do it now. Gather ye rosebuds while ye may. Dead Poet Society, man. Like that. It's right now. You have a week to attack this draft class. You have a season to start trying to identify micro markets and get ahead of things and be quick on the trigger, but don't hurry into a decision. You calculate your decision and then you make it. And I think that's it. And again, like Tommy B, he said it. He said it right. Be bold and don't hesitate to do something that is different, that differentiates you from your league, as long as you have that process behind it, that conviction behind it, that idea behind it that's not just reckless, but well thought out and intentional. Go do it.
Chase the value of being different. In the immortal words of American philosopher Taylor Swift, 'tis the dang season. 'Tis the dang season. Zach, it's been a privilege to be able to chop it up with you. The draft is here next week. I'm super excited about it. My allergies are continuing to remind me that April is here, that May is around the corner. And this has been a very special time for us to be able to prepare, to talk strategy, and to lean in to the edges, however slim they may be, as we approach the NFL draft.
Yeah. Hey, everybody's got the same information on players that everybody else does. You win at the margins right here with the Dynasty Dummies. We're going to be back next week live with the Day 2 draft show, Friday, the 28th of April. I'm going to be here at 7. There are going to be other people joining us. I don't know, JMic, if you're going to be here quite at 7, but we'll get you in when you're here. We're going to have the big Dynasty Dummies family. We hope that you will come join us, jump in the chat. Maybe I'll drop you a link. We'll see what happens, and we'll enjoy it. We're doing the day 2. We'll get the second round, the third round, where all the magic happens for fantasy football. And until then, we appreciate you rolling with us. We appreciate you listening. JMic is at JMic on Twitter. I am at Tacit Assassin 13. The show you can find at Dynasty Dummies. This has been the Dynasty Dummies. Thanks for listening. Peace. And then there's a button up here
Somewhere.
I got to click.
Come on.
There it is.